Welcome back from that commercial break. We are back with leadership and governance. We are talking about some of the myths and the consequences they can cause if they are not banked. And before the break, Diana had told us that sometimes the institution can close immediately, especially if you believe that the vision, the owner of the institution is everything.
Yeah.
You're the final, you have the final say.
Yeah.
Even when the professionals advise you,
Yeah.
what you think is right is what should be done. What about the second one that you had started before the break?
You know, there's a myth that leaders should always be on top of their game, and so they should never take a break. And you seem to be agreeing with that. They should never take a break.
No, they have made us believe
But they don't take breaks.
Yes.
Actually, the worst leaders are the ones who don't take breaks, because you're going to suffer what you call burnout. Everybody eventually goes through burnout. And so you have to realize why you are having burnout and build systems and mechanisms that help you not burn out. Every well-to-do or very serious leader, whether it's church, an institution, will always take leave, will take a sabbatical, will take a vacation. They will do something in that time that allows them to refresh. Because each of us runs low. We run low on oil. We run low on stamina to go on. We always need someone to pour into us. We always need to be something pouring into us. If you don't have that space and that place, you're going to go through what you call burnout. So the idea that you should always be on top of your game, never take a break, 24/7, 7 days a week, you must be at a certain place, it doesn't work for everyone.
Even when you're not expected to show up.
That's just irresponsibility. The inability to delegate and allow other people, that's irresponsibility. So the idea that I have to show up constantly, I realize doesn't work. It doesn't work for anybody because you're human. Even God took a break on the seventh day. Who are you to think that you can't take a break? Even if the business is in its budding stages, step away. Learn to step away, and you will have a fresh view of things. You'll have a different perspective. Especially when you take a break. You've had people say that I need to sleep on it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make the decision now. What they're really saying is I'm stepping away from the situation to get a new perspective to it. If I have time to rest my brain might give me a better idea, or God might give me a dream that will give me perspective to this. I actually had the story being told by one of the lead pastors, I think in Nigeria, the older generation. They had built the church and it was fantastic. Everything was perfect to a dot. Now they need to bring the organ into the church. The problem is that there were glass doors to bring the organ through. Now they tried everything to bring that organ through. Everything. They tried left, right, back, everything. Nothing was functioning. And so they told the pastor, we're going to break the sides of the doors. We'll just have to replace them. That would be an extra cost. Now that doors, I think, there was something also special. I think they'd been imported. It was going to be very expensive to break it. And he said, do not touch my doors. Don't touch my doors. He said, give me time. I'm going to go back. I'll give you a solution. Now, I thought, what possible solution? Is God going to get the organ and throw it into the church? And so he went to sleep. And then he got the idea, deflate the tires of the organ, because that's the only space that they needed. So he came back and engineers had tried. Every profession had tried, it had failed. And so when he came back, he just said, deflate the tires. Everybody was surprised. All they needed to do was deflate the tires. And it entered. What did he do? He stepped away. And that's what a leader does. Take time to step away, to find some different perspective. If you also don't debunk these myths and you never show vulnerability to people, and people think of you as that well put together, have it all together. Leadership has this natural magnet that people always pour their problems on you. Always,
True.
always poor. You will not find, you won't find a single pastor who spends 7 days without listening to people's problems. And they are diverse, they are many, they are scandalous, they are traumatic, they are people's problems. When people give you their problems, they can range from the most minor to the most serious. And same with counselors, psychologists, these different people. Now that's what happens to leadership also. Everyone that walks through your door is bringing you a problem. What makes you a leader is that you can give a solution. And that's what you have to be good at, giving a solution. Now it doesn't make you the ultimate person, because God is actually the ultimate. Now if you posture yourself as someone who never shows vulnerability, and you never empathize with people when they come to you, what you're going to get is a hard-faced person. And so people will now realize that person doesn't empathize, so why should I go to them? That person never shows even sympathy for the things that we're going through, so why should we go to them? Because you're posturing yourself as this person who is too hard to feel the frailties of man. Yet the scripture says Jesus was touched with the feeling of our infirmities, our weaknesses. If our own Savior was touched with the feelings of our infirmities, how much more you as a leader? He wept when Lazarus died. Yeah. He was very sad when John was beheaded, and he took time away. There are moments where you see Jesus showed the frailty of human nature. He sat down at a well because he was tired. When he was fasted, he was hungry, and the angels had to attend to him. I also want angels to attend to me. The angels had to attend to him. Now, if you never show that level of vulnerability, what you're telling people is that you are not human. And so eventually you're going to close people out, and they're going to close you out. And you will cease to be a good leader. You will actually delve into the place of management. I think the last one for me is if people think that you never make mistakes, it will be hard for people to be open to you. No one is going to be open. Nobody wants to be judged by someone that's perfect. The reason we submit to judging is because we know that you understand and you feel with us. In fact, the scripture given you earlier on, it says he's touched with our infirmities. A high priest who is touched with our infirmities, and yet he was tempted in all ways without sin. And what makes him the high priest and the righteous judge is because he walked through what we walked through. He understands the pain that we go through, and that's why you can trust Jesus. So you don't want to trust a judge who doesn't make mistakes. You want to trust somebody who shows some level of humanity and understands the frailty of humanity.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Now, there's something you talked about, the difference between a leader and a manager. So how can leaders and managers overcome their own biases and assumptions to become more effective?
Overcoming your bias?
Yes.
Oh dear God, how do you change a manager into a leader? That's really difficult. But I think that
both of them, leaders and managers. But
I think everybody needs to be skilled at every level of their life. You have to recognize that you are not good at everything. It's difficult for me to think I'm not good at everything. But you have to realize that you're not good at everything. You can't be good at everything. And so
even when others see the potential in you,
you're not good at everything. You can't there are people who are multifaceted, they're good. Yeah. People, my team says it in this way, your left brain works really well. So the left brain is the creative side. And so you'll see the artists, the singing, the crafts, the different things that fall. And then the right brain is more the science is the academic, the different things. Some of us may be great at both. We have a balance of both. But everybody's not good at something, is not good at everything, and so you need to always join experts. Yeah? So a leader, to be greater, draw in an expert that trains you. A manager, to cross from managing to leadership, draw in an expert that trains you. There's coaching on every side. Both people need to be coached. You can rise from being a manager to becoming a leader. You can rise from being a lower level leadership to a high tier leadership. John Maxwell says there are 5 levels of leadership. You can rise from tier 1, where it's just positional, back up to the place where you are exceptional leader, where you are now building other leaders. So you go through the stages of leadership. Now you don't rise because you want to rise or they're giving you positions. You rise because there's coaching, there's learning, and you're growing. So both people need to be trained, both people need to be coached to become the best of themselves. And I think the other thing that everybody needs to do is have an accountability person who can tell you the truth. Many of us don't like to hear the truth. I mean, it's difficult to hear criticism or to allow someone to critique you. Now, when I started working, I never enjoyed performance appraisals. I don't think I still enjoy them. I don't enjoy performance appraisals. Also because the people on the other side were just harsh. How they gave it to you. I do something in March and you come to December to tell me I did this in March on such and such a day.
That is the appointed time for appraisal.
If I did something in March, you are a week leader who tells it to me in December.
Maybe they assume that by the time, if they were to tell you in March, they would come with all that anger and bitterness, and then
they were waiting for something to write at the end of the year to make you feel as less than. And you can't use that. I think good leaders come straight out and teach and coach. In fact, you should be giving me praise in December if you spoke to me in March and I improved all the way through. Yeah, you should be praising me in December, saying, you are good, you are teachable, and you actually listen, because we had a one-on-one discussion in March when this and this happened, and you were able to transition and change, and I saw the steps that you had taken to become a better person. But if you keep quiet in March and then you write it in December, or you say something in March without praise and steps of improvement, and then you write it in December, you are a horrible leader. And so I think many of us started with that when we were just in the workspace. If not that, they were shouting at you and all those different things. And so it's while people said we were soft getting into the workspace, I just think it was a bad culture that had been cultivated over time, that you wait to malice somebody in your appraisal. I think that good leaders should actually be upfront there and then. So how do managers improve? Managers should stop being at the level where they're just setting goals. They should stop being at a level where they're waiting for things to come at the end, and rise to a point where you are growing, where you're growing people and grooming people. That's what makes you a good leader.
Okay. You talked about something that reminded me something when you talked about the appraisals. There are people who don't like to be appraised like you. One, I think it was Miss Irene Kauma who said that we are in a society where there is no humility in any way. That even when you're shouting on a microphone, that's the example she used. Even when you're shouting on a microphone, someone says, "Oh wow, you spoke very well." So at some point I feel we are also living in a society where appraisals may not really be a better check. Where someone will tell you what you want to hear, and at the end of the day, everything is okay. Everybody,
I think, to be honest, appraisals are difficult for everybody. If we're honest, they're difficult. They're difficult because of the people who are on the other side doing the appraisal. This is why I can take an appraisal. If I know you genuinely care for me and you love me. If you genuinely care for me and you love me, I will take your critiquing at any point in time, because I know you want me to improve, because the way you even approach it will be different. It will not be to put me down, but it will be to raise me up. And so that's what makes the difference, that I can trust that your appraisal is coming from a good place. But in workspaces, it's rarely coming from a good place. People are coming from a place where they think, don't take my position. Don't look better than me. And yet you should be such a good leader at work that you're willing to raise your people. You're willing to do the best for them so that they can become the best. Because when the people become their best selves and they leave and go somewhere else, it is you that they will always mention. You saw the best in them. and you brought out the best in them. I would prefer that legacy over being a manager that met the team's objectives. That's something that anyone would prefer. But to the side of whether people should or shouldn't take criticism or critiquing, because criticism is actually bad. But each of us should learn that you do not grow until you can be accountable. You do not grow. When we do the mentorship program, especially under Pastor, my team, sometimes you want to say certain things to people that you're mentoring, but you also realize the program is free, and so people can walk away. But you learn to structure it in such a way that they can hear it. And then sometimes you know when to pull back and know they're not ready to take it at this point in time. What you also do is you have to receive feedback from them. Because when we do evaluation of the program at the end of the day, we ask them to give an anonymous feedback of how they felt about the mentorship program. They're giving feedback about you as the mentor, you're giving feedback about them as the mentee. Now, hearing it is actually good for both of you. Because when you come into the program the next time, you know that I failed as a mentor because of this place, that place, and that place. And you also know as a mentee, I didn't benefit from the program to the maximum because of this and that and that. Now, you need to know at which point in the program to have this conversation. You can't have that conversation with someone at the beginning of the program because there's no bonding that has taken place. There's no trust that has been created. There's no middle ground that has happened. Regardless of the fact that expectations have been set, you need to be careful that form a certain degree of bonding such that by the time you give feedback to this person, you are giving honest feedback. But also I learned that feedback has got to be redemptive. If it's not redemptive in nature, then it's not good. And I'm learning as I grow up, even when I have ideas about the different spaces that God has put me in, I need to be, and I'm discussing them with somebody, there has to be some level of redemption for how I am giving this information. I was very challenged yesterday and the days before when someone asked, can God truly trust you? Because sometimes you're given leadership positions, and by virtue of the fact that you sit in that position, you're going to have a different eye view from everybody else. You will have the ability to see the weaknesses of leaders in higher positions. Can God trust you enough not to expose them? Can God trust you enough that when He sends people to you, you're not going to expose people's things? You're not going to preaching at the pulpit and saying, you know, a young man came to me who works in a TV station. The man is being really bad. It really challenged me about the idea of being trustworthy. And it had me checking the places and platforms that God has given me and people who are in leadership in those spaces. And I was very convicted that as I speak about these people sometimes, is there a redemption in how I speak about them? Otherwise, there's no reason for God to lift you to another space. And so when you listen to this level of feedback, even from God, and you're open enough to receive it from Him, from the people above you, from peers, it makes you a better leader and a better person. And that's what you want, as opposed to closing out and pretending that all of it is well.
Can I do a personal check, a personal appraisal? And one morning, I get a list, I start, punctuality. Is it possible?
The best people do both, because you also have to see what you see, right? John Maxwell will teach you, they'll give you a side where you appraise yourself, and they'll take that very same thing and give it to somebody else. And the person will do the same for you. If they're too much, then you're honest. But if there's a difference, then there's something about your idea you need to check. And so that's what leaders do at a certain level of leadership. That you must take stock. I mean, the scripture says very clearly, that if you desire to build a house, first sit down and count the cost. Lest you start and you are unable to complete and people begin to laugh at you. Now, it's talking about building a house, but it's a very critical principle about the way we lead our lives. That you always have to take stock. Are you equal to the task? Are you able to do what it is that you say you're doing? So every leader at a certain point, and that's why you always have to have retreats. When I have my retreats at the end of the year, I'm scoring myself. How did I perform spiritually? And what are the things at the spiritual level? How did I perform mentally? How did I perform in my relationships? How did I perform in my finances? Yes. And under them, there are bullet points. When I say spiritual, how did I do with my Bible study, my prayer life? How did I do with raising other people spiritually? What did I do to grow So they order mentally, how many books did I read? What about my mindset changed in the year? This year, perhaps I didn't like certain groups of people, a certain tribe. What changed about it the next year? You know. So when I sit down at the end of the year, I'm doing that. And so I plan for the beginning of the year about how it's going to be. But every quarter, I have to draw back and check. Every quarter, I have to draw back and check. How am I doing as a person? And so that's your evaluation. How am I doing as a person? And I'm honest. I sit before God and say, honestly, this is my evaluation. Now you evaluate me. Yeah? And so every quarter, I stop, I check, I evaluate. Sometimes quarters, it can happen. For some time, I take a day to evaluate before I turn another year. I take time to evaluate what has been my last year. By the time I reach December to do that full evaluation, I've done quarterly check-ins. It's the same as if you're building a business. Your life is your business. It is your brand. It is something that has to go. If you're never intentional about it, it's going to collapse. If you're never intentional about it, somebody is going to be in control of your life. And so you have to be very careful that you're taking that quarterly stock. And so you are right that sit down, take stock, but also for leadership, especially where you're working with other people, give them that same thing and let them evaluate you.
Who should I give it to specifically? Because sometimes you might give it to someone who is also biased, and then the results look totally different.
Who do you lead? That's the person you give it to. For people who are in managerial positions, it's easy. But you have to make it anonymous. Because people are rarely truthful when they know that they're not anonymous. It's why when we do evaluations, even in the mentorship program, all those different places, we make it anonymous. We don't need your name. We just need honest feedback. When we do the conference evaluation, give us feedback. Now, also feedback needs to be saved. I tell people that feedback that comes for one day, when someone attended one day, when we had 8 days running, is not sufficient to be weighed against someone who attended 8 days. Because the IV is for one day. This person's IV is for 7 other days. They're giving you a more balanced view than someone gives you one day. And so when you receive feedback as a leader, especially when it's personal, there are things that I look at and say, this is valid, this one is not valid. And I'm honest enough and self-aware enough to know what is true and what is not true. If somebody just say Diana overtalks, who will be surprised? No one's going to be surprised. If somebody say Diana is tall, who's going to be surprised, right? But if you say certain things about Diana that people don't know and they're not sure about, that's not feedback I can receive. I will just say, no, not worth my time. Move on.
What are your parting shots as we wind up this discussion?
Debunking leadership myths. I think there are many myths about leadership, but what makes you a good leader is understanding the key things that cause you to rise. The ability to influence, to inspire, and to grow the next generation. When you get lost in these myths, you can esteem yourself to a level that you'll never rise to. But if you're able to become self-aware, to understand what makes you grow and makes you tick as a leader, you'll become the most excellent leader there has ever been.
Thank you so much, Diana, and thank you so much to you, our viewer. Today I've learned a lot, and I think this program came for me and some other person who is like me. Well, we've debunked a number of myths, and yeah, moving forward, I believe we shall have the right mindset and the right perspective over leadership and leaders. Thank you so much for choosing to watch us this evening. And yeah, Adrian Colors is my name. We are getting into the last hours of our time. Next is soul moment, and yeah, pray is good. So don't sleep without prayer. Soul moment, and remember we have a number of programs coming up tomorrow as well, until 9 p.m. tomorrow, where we shall have parenting with Claire Wing. Everyone knows we've worked with Andrew and Norman, plus Janan, our producer. From the entire team,